Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name's Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Corporal Chloe Palmer. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. Could I ask you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem? If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant Louis Titzel. Popularly known as Lou, Louis Walter Titzel was born in Warwick, Queensland in 1886 to Betsy and Heinrich Titzel. He was one of 6 children born to the couple, 2 of whom died in infancy. His mother, Betsy, was born in Lincolnshire, England, and came to Australia in 1873. His father, Heinrich Titzel, was born in Hanover, Germany, and also migrated to Australia in 1873, arriving with his 5 brothers and a sister. Louis's father was a tobacconist with his own business in Warwick, and Louis and his 4 brothers grew up in the area. Following his schooling, he went on to become a telegraphist. Louis Titzel enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in February 1915. He proved an able soldier and was promoted a number of times within a year of enlistment. Titzel arrived on Gallipoli in September 1915. Although the major offensive operations were over, he still experienced the danger of the battlefield. He wrote home to say that the 20th of October 1915 will be a date that I shall not forget quickly. On that day, his mate, Lieutenant Osterleone, was next to him in the trench fixing the parapet. He turned to step back into the trench and was shot in the back of the head, falling dead at Titzel's feet. Titzel recalled, "I had the honour of being one of those who bore the stretcher on which his remains rested to the graveside. Always his first thought was his men. On route marches, he always passed in and amongst his men with a cheery, encouraging word, at the same time seeing so far as he could to their comfort." Weeks later, Titzel himself, wounded by a bomb, was evacuated to hospital in Malta. In April 1916, after arriving in France, Titzel was promoted to 2nd Lieutenant and, by all accounts, took Osterleone's example to heart in developing his own leadership style. His friend, Lieutenant Fletcher, later recalled, "On the series of route marches from Amiens to Albert, we had glorious fun together, just as if nothing was in store for us." They reached the front line in late July 1916, near the French village of Pozières. Fletcher recalled, "In the morning, we heard that we were to attack that night. There was very little to do, for we were preparing for this reality for the past week, and by that time, all were ready to do or die." The attack was launched at 12:15 a.m, and on the 29th of July, Lieutenant Titzel, in command of a number of 12 platoon of C Company of the 25th Battalion, led his men over the parapet and towards a strongly held German trench known as OG-1. There he found that the German barbed wire defences were uncut, and in a hail of machine gun fire, tried desperately to guide his men through a small gap that he had found. About 10 minutes after the attack began, Titzel was shot in the head and blinded. He grabbed the nearest man and said, "I'm blind. Find the sergeant and tell him to carry on." He could not get back to safety and took shelter in a nearby shell hole. He was never seen alive again. He was 30 years old. Lieutenant Fletcher wrote, "We are all sorry, those of us who are left, to lose such a brave officer. Still, it is one consolation, to know that he died bravely and carrying out the noblest duty with his men. It was an honour to have acted and cheered the boys as he had, and may there be many more to act in a similar manner." In Australia, Louis Titzel's father sought official confirmation of his son's fate. He had many letters from Titzel's comrades telling him how his son had probably died, but wanted to know where his son's body was located. He died in 1926. The following year, Lou Titzel's body was discovered during exhumation work around Pozières. He was buried in the nearby AAF burial ground in Fleur. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among many more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Second Lieutenant Louis Walter Tidzel, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.